Greenwich, Connecticut with a trip up the northeast corridor of I-95 to cover the 2017 Greenwich Concours d'Elegance on my schedule. I had to make sure I at least fit in. Arriving in a weathered 6-cylinder Honda Accord to one of the country's most opulent car shows would probably have resulted in at least a few people staring with disapproval, so you should have seen the grin on my face when Mercedes lent this 2017 Mercedes-AMG C63 Cabriolet to be my chariot. Because the 2017 C63 blends the elegance and pure brute force of AMG's boot camp with a shrunken-down S63 Cabriolet form, it adds itself to the list of drop tops that look good with their tops up. Though devoid of the S-Class Wirtschaftsmaus LCD screens, the C63 is nicely appointed and features some of the best buckets I've occupied in quite a while. The materials are top-rate, and no matter the situation, the C63's confines provide a lovely refuge from just about anything plebeian. If I had to complain about something, it would be the placement of the center infotainment screen. I never was a fan of the design, and to me, it looks like an afterthought. With its matte black, multi-spoke AMG wheels, larger air dams in the front lower fascia, and pronounced haunches, the C63 arrives to the party with plenty of curb swag, but in a sleek and subtle manner rather than a shouty one. Arriving to the 2017 Greenwich Concours d'Elegance just off I-95, the C63 certainly got its fair share of smartphone camera time from eager young enthusiasts to old-timer collectors. That is, if the engine wasn't enough to already announce my arrival. When the AMG C-Class first arrived, it came with a naturally aspirated inline-6. As it evolved, it grew to offer the choice of 6 or 8 cylinders, with the latest and greatest using a thundering 8. Lifted straight from the AMG GTS, the twin-turbo 4.0-liter V8 sports 503 horsepower and 516 lb-ft of torque, good for a 0 to 60 time of just 4.1 seconds. If you ever wanted to know what a sledgehammer feels like for acceleration, the C63's turbo lag-free Savage acceleration is a good place to start. It's beyond easy to render anything behind to a speck in the rear view at the flex of your right foot. The 7-speed dual-clutch AMG speed shift cog swapper delivers beautifully throttle-matched downshifts with control at your disposal via the steering wheel-mounted paddle shifters. Although a bit jerky around town, the box provides perfect upshifts and lightning-quick downshifts. No matter the mode, correlating to the car's driver-selectable profiles, comfort, sport, sport plus, race, individual, the V8's power band will always be there to burn as many hydrocarbons as you desire. Comfort relaxes the car to its most sedate state, putting the AMG ride control at its softest setting, exhaust at its quietest, and the throttle at its laziest. The power is still there if you need it, but in a hushed way. The ride also does a superb job at ironing out most of the road's imperfections without sacrificing feel. Engaging sport and stiffens the suspension, quickens the gear changes and holds them longer, loudens the exhaust, and hastens the go pedal. Put it in race mode and the C63 goes full on Messerschmitt. The engine cracks and burbles on the overrun as it revs down, and bellows under any sort of throttle. Unlike the Jaguar F-Type's crackling, high-revving V8 sound, the C63 beckons with a baritone roar. But the C63 Cabriolet isn't without issues. Removing the roof off of any vehicle compromises structural rigidity, requiring engineers to reinforce the chassis. That increases weight, in addition to the added weight of the folding roof mechanism. Despite attempts to stiffen, the C63's chassis still exhibits a bit of cowl shake, which results in pronounced chassis flex over rough surfaces. As a result, parts of the car like the steering column and the dashboard shudder over bumps. This also caused the C63's cabin to develop squeaks and rattles with the top down. Another downside is less predictable handling. Because of the extra chassis flexes and weight, full-fledged driving can be a bit of a handful and the feeling, unsettling. But the effects are only noticed when one pushed the C63 above 7/10 driving. Get the C63 to bite at you and recovery is a bit trickier because of the chassis flex. Thankfully, stability control will keep you on the road. But turn any of the driver aids off, and you'd better be on your A game. Then there's the price. The C63S starts at $80,850, an average price for this amount of car. But as tested, this specific car is fully loaded to the brim. It cracks the buck at $100,800. To some, that's a lot of dough for just a C-Class. But it wouldn't be just any ordinary C-Class, but $100,800 worth of AMG modified C-Class. And altogether, you very much get $100,800 worth of car. Grand Rapids, Michigan. It wasn't quite the way I expected to take delivery of the automobile Four Seasons 2017 BMW M2. As road test editor Eric Wiener noted in the last update, the German two-door made the trip to me from Jing-Erman Raceway via BMW roadside assistance and a flatbed. All's well that ends well, though, and the Long Beach Blue metallic coupe is now happily running on a fresh Michelin Pilot Super Sport rear tire. Well, that rubber isn't exactly fresh now, as I've been having far too much fun with BMW's cheapest M car. Not that cheapest should remotely be considering a negative. The M2 continues to be my favorite current M model. It's also an Automobile 2017 All-Star. I've spent significant time behind the wheel of a manual M2, but this is my first stint with the dual-clutch, DCT, version. Being a hardcore fan of 3 pedals, I assumed I wouldn't jive with the high-tech setup. Well, you know what they say about assumptions. The DCT works brilliantly with the torque-rich engine, swapping ratios quickly and adding even more pace to the evocative package. I love that BMW gives you the choice to shift via paddles or the gearbox selector in the center console. I'd still buy the 6-speed manual because that's who I am, but I honestly feel the M2 is a better car with the 7-speed DCT. The M2's inline-6 makes gobs of power, but it's not the most exciting engine around. It's more of a tool to get the job done than an emotional, visceral power plant focused on the destination rather than the journey. Luckily, the destination is impressive performance. Speaking of journeys, I pressed the M2 into family adventure duties and it worked surprisingly well. You'd think a smallish coupe wouldn't be practical, but that's certainly not the case. The seats are mega comfortable with plenty of adjustment, only let down by a flawed, crooked driving position. My 10 and 12-year-old children had plenty of room in back and the trunk fit all our stuff. Access to those rear seats is quick and easy, helped by handy auxiliary power seat switches on the top of the front seats. And the back seats fold, helping with Saturday errands to Home Depot and bed, bath and beyond for flooring and the like. Blue, you're my boy. Ride quality is quite good considering the short wheelbase and overall performance on offer, and body control is exemplary. Yes, the M2 is stiff at low speeds, a substantial amount of road noise from the wide tires permeates into the cabin, and the suspension gets crashy on Michigan's horrible roads, but it's by no means horrible. The BMW is far more compliant and refined than my old Ford Focus Rs. The iDrive infotainment system adds to the M2's trusty companion status on road trips. Efficient arrival at your destination is sorted by the clear, concise satellite navigation and excellent 4G cellular-based traffic data free for 4 years. The large dash-mounted screen advises on the amount of time any traffic snarls will delay your journey and then makes recommendations to either stay on the current road or change your route. Very slick. Additionally, there's wireless smartphone app integration for music options such as Pandora and Amazon Music. Our early build 2017 square meters isn't compatible with BMW's impressive wireless Apple CarPlay integration, but cars built from August 2017 can be factory equipped, or upgraded by owners over the air. I do wish the M2 carried a larger fuel tank, as 13.7 gallons simply isn't enough. An 80 miles per hour highway cruise results in around a 26 mpg average, allowing you to travel around 325 miles before stopping, but it's around town where the thirst of the powerful turbocharged engine finds you visiting the fuel station far too often. This isn't helped by the fact that the M2 is so much fun to thrash. But any adolescent thrashing must wait until you get your head around the confusing drive modes. BMW's M3/M4 carry dedicated buttons for adjusting the steering, throttle, DCT shift speed, etc. You're then able to easily store your preferred setup in one of two preset buttons on the steering wheel. Not so with the M2. Its setup is adapted from the 230i/M240i and is not as intuitive. If you turn off stability control, DSC, you're forced into an ultra-aggressive DCT shift setup and, far worse, the electric power steering switches to an artificially heavy configuration. It's a similar situation with the more laid-back but not nearly relaxed enough M dynamic mode, setting for the DSC. Come on, BMW. You've given us one of your best M cars in years, yet we can't properly configure the settings to enjoy the car to the full potential. The lack of configurability was particularly frustrating when I visited Grattan Raceway. My focus for the day was to test and work on the chassis setup for two dedicated race cars and an M4 GTS, but I had to at least try the M2 around a 2.0-mile track. Wouldn't you? The BMW was great fun, but the overly nanny MDM continued to frustrate and I quickly fully disengaged the DSC. Unfortunately, that brought along the diluted, hefty steering. At least the general balance of the M2 was impressive and it's huge fun to smoke the rear tires. You just must mind the way the twin-scroll turbo hits in the low-speed corners as throttle modulation while trying to maximize lap times versus drifting fun isn't particularly easy. Again, the engine is more about making power than being a crescendoing sweetheart. The weight of the M2 also reared its ugly head at Grattan. A car this small simply shouldn't weigh over 3,500 pounds. My drive home from the track reminded me why the M2 is still a hugely entertaining car. Once you get past the niggling details and understand that the entry-level M is all about hooligan fun, you fully appreciate it once again. It's wicked fast, comfortable, decent on fuel when respected, and surprisingly practical. The rear drive coupe is something of a nearly half-price Porsche 911. It can play the role of a selfish, fun toy but also easily serves as both a trusty day-to-day companion and a second family vehicle. And the BMW trumps the rear engine 2+2 by having more room for bigger kids and even adults in the back seat. The next stop for our Four Seasons M2 is California, where it will live out its days until BMW steals it back. I picture the West Coast crew at Automobile kicking and screaming as the keys are pried from their hands at the end of the one-year stay. I'm sure sad to see the M2 leave Michigan.